Let's talk about domain names. A lot of people think that when they buy a domain name, that immediately gives them email, it gives them website, it all just pops up. That's not really the case. You buy a domain name is a bit like getting your phone number for your phone. You're buying your SIM card. Without actually then buying a service to run anything on, it doesn't do anything for you. You just have that number. So it's a bit like just having that domain name. And if you might need more than one, so you want the .co.nz, .nz, .com, you want to make sure you can secure all of those. Once you've got the domain name, you want to make sure when you buy it that you have access to what's called your DNS records or your zone records, because this is where you're going to be able to redirect things to actually be able to use the web or email. Now, some services offer you very cheap domain names, but they then charge you more for DNS. So it's worth checking before you start. So what's DNS? Well, this is where you have different records called CNAMEs, text records, things like that that you may have heard of. For instance, you'd have an A record sometimes to point to your website, or you have MX records to point to your hosting of your email. So you have your domain name, and then you have your hosting for two separate things. One is for email, one is for your website. And then there's other records that you can use within there, which might validate you on Google, for example, or validate you in MailChimp. But it's worth knowing what a domain does and what you need to renew. So if you're renewing, you would renew the domain name, otherwise everything falls off. And you'll also be renewing your hosting if you've got email, or your hosting if you've got a website. You don't need to have both. They don't need to both be in the same place, and they can be hosted elsewhere. So you could be paying 3 different people. So hopefully that explains what a domain name is and a little bit of the myth around if I buy a domain name, suddenly I'm going to have a website, or I'm going to build a website on a builder. But if you haven't got a domain name to put it on, you're going to need to buy one.